Hi, I'm Jeff Estrella, creator of the Balikbayan comic, and you are listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Jeff Estrella about his new comic book on Kickstarter entitled Balikbayan, The Return. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Jeff Estrella is a Toronto-based, Scarborough-raised, Pilipinas-born writer who's been active in the Toronto comics community for over a decade. He's been featured in 3 volumes of the Toronto Comics Anthology from T.O. Comics Press, and has self-published a short comics collection and zine. Balikbayan, The Return will be his first full-length comic, and is joined by Filipino-American artist Fabian Lele, colorist Riley McFarlane, letterer Devin Xavier Wong, and editor-publisher Alison O'Toole. Balikbayan is named for the care packages that Filipinos living overseas send back to family in the Philippines. This book is a 24-page opening chapter of a story that draws from traditional Filipino folktales, and is inspired by films like Hereditary, The Wailing, and The Farewell. It explores the often strained relationships between the children of immigrants and their parents, and the difficulties of reconciling those two worlds. It asks, what if those old stories of ghosts and monsters from back home were true? So without further ado, here's my chat with Jeff Estrella about his new comic book on Kickstarter entitled Balikbayan, The Return. So Jeff Estrella, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you, John.
I appreciate your time. Before I get going with all the questions, I'd like to know, what was the first comic book that you read?
The first comic book I remember reading as a child was an issue of the Amazing Spider-Man that I think was made for the Blue Jays. And it was an issue where they go to a baseball game and the Montreal Expos and the Toronto Blue Jays help Spider-Man beat the Green Goblin. And I remember reading that cover to cover because I was really into baseball. It was the early 90s, and it was the best thing I had ever read. And probably might still be.
Do you still have that? That sounds like a collector's item.
God, I'm sure it's someplace at my parents' house, like buried in boxes somewhere, missing pages. But I used to read it all the time, like cover to cover, over and over again.
Sure. Well, who or what inspires you to create today?
I got my love of comics from my dad. We moved here from the Philippines when I was I was just like a little kid, and my dad didn't speak a lot of English, but he loved comic books. He read comics when he was a kid. It was the only thing he read, and to this day, it's the only thing he will read. He won't read a book. But he'll read a comic book cover to cover. That kind of started my love of comics and wanting to make my own. It's just gone from there, and I've read some incredible comic books, and I think it's such a unique medium where you can do very specific things that you can't do in prose or in film or in television, things like that. That is just so much fun to work in.
Great. Well, we're here talking about your latest comic book project on Kickstarter called Balikbayan. Wonder if you could talk a wee bit about the story. What is it all about?
Yeah, so Balikbayan is a term that Filipino expats use, and it loosely translates to going home or going back to where you came from. And it was the actual Balikbayan is folks sending care packages basically back home to their family because they went overseas. So the comic is about a young man who has to go back to the Philippines where he hasn't been since he was a child. So that's the Balikbayan sort of aspect of it. But the reason he has to go back is he finds out from his father, and he starts seeing something like a ghostly entity that is haunting him. And he finds out from his father that there's a curse that was placed on their family generations ago if they don't stop it, it's going to like destroy their lives, like it did his father and his father before him and his brothers. And the only way to do that is to go back home and to confront the being that has cursed them. So in a nutshell, that's what it's about.
Wow. Okay. So it's a unique take on the immigrant experience, I guess,
Exactly.
with a
Yeah.
twist of horror in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Very good. Now, I'd like to ask you if this is a one-man show, are you doing this all on your own, or do you have others helping you?
No. So when I started doing it, I did write. I wrote. I came up with the idea. I wrote the script all myself. I'm not a great artist. I did some art classes when I was a teenager, but that's probably the extent of my ability. So I am working with an artist. His name is Fabian Lilai. He's based out of New York, and he's also he's a Filipino expat like myself. It was really important for me to work with a Filipino artist because I think like just being able to understand the things that I'm describing and knowing what the city is like and the country is like, and the same that immigrant experience, I think like it translates really well, and in the book as well that we work really well together. But yeah, I also have a colorist and a letterer and a few other folks that are working on it as well.
Great. Now, I'd like to ask you how Alison O'Toole is involved beyond introducing us for this interview.
Yeah. So Alison, full disclosure, is my partner. We've been living together for some time, but she is actually the editor on the book. She put the team together, other than obviously myself. She was the one who put us all together: the artist, the letterer, the colorist, and she is running most of the promotion and the Kickstarter itself. We're running that together, but she's really quite experienced with Kickstarter. She's had a couple of successful campaigns already, and is currently a member of their advisory council as well.
Wow! So you couldn't ask for a better editor, I guess. Then.
Yeah. I'm really lucky to work with her, and she's just so talented, so good at what she does, and it's one of those. If anyone asks, like, "Oh, what does an editor do?" and it's kind of a hard thing to explain. And now I see in full what an editor does, and she does so much, and it's at times it's such a thankless job, I think. And she works really hard, and all the success this Kickstarter will have is due to her.
Well, that's good that she's on board. There you go. So maybe you could talk about the collaboration process. How was it working with your artist, Fabian, on this? Did you just say, here's a script and away you went, or was there a little bit of back and forth?
Yeah, there's a bit of back and forth. So I had written the script, in a couple forms a while ago. Just it's a story that's really close to my heart. Something that is almost, it's not, I don't know if I can call it a true story, but it is actually based on a story my father told me about our own family. And so that was what inspired me to write the story. And I had it as prose at first, and then it evolved into a comic book over time. So when Fabian came to me or we came together rather, the script was pretty much done, but we talked about it, and I let him know, like, here's what I'm looking for, here's the story, here's the vibe, and we kind of hashed out like how we want characters to look, how we want the locations within the Philippines. A lot of it takes place in the Philippines proper, in Manila and in provincial areas, and so that part we could talk about, and him understanding or having an understanding already of the city and the places, it really helped that process.
Great. Now, because this is a Kickstarter project, typically it comes with a variety of different incentives for people. I wonder if you could talk about the rewards being offered.
Yeah. So we've got, obviously the book itself, and, a digital or a print copy of it. But we've also got a couple of prints that are available. We've got one from a couple of really great local Toronto artists. One of them is Joyce San. She does a lot of, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like made with pencil crayons, the style of art. But she does a lot of horror art, and she's got a couple books out through Silver Sprocket and a couple other publishers. So we've got a great print from her, and I've got another print by Emmanuel Chateauneuf, who is also a Toronto-based artist, and she's got a couple comics as well. And we've also got commissions that Fabian will do for some of the higher tier backers as well.
Great. Lots of good stuff there on the go. Wanted to ask you then, because a Kickstarter doesn't, you've got to do the work. you got to get it out there in front of people. I'm wondering how you're promoting it. Beyond this interview we're doing right now, what other plans do you have for your book?
Yeah, God, it's one of those things that, this is the first Kickstarter that I'm directly involved in. I've been part of books that have been put out through Kickstarter in the past, but this is my first one that I'm kind of co-running, and it's shocking how much press needs you need to do, and you really need to be out there on the social media. I'm posting every day to Instagram, to the app formerly known as Twitter, to Facebook. I've got Blue Sky, anything and anywhere. I'll even send group text or text to group chats I'm in, and I've reached out to a couple actual Filipino media sites to kind of spread the word within the Filipino expat community here in Canada, but also overseas, to see if I think that the story will resonate with a lot of folks, whether they're Canadian or not, and I hope to reach them through that. And that's the main stuff I've done so far. But we've got a couple other things lined up, other interviews and appearances at events.
Good. Yeah, it does take a lot of work. It doesn't happen overnight, but more power to you. Yeah. So you've got this project on the go, and you're working on Kickstarter. Is it fair to ask if you've got anything else that you've got cooking that will be coming down the road?
Currently, what's coming out is the first issue of the book. So I've got the rest of the book ready to go as well. So that'll be coming out when this one, fingers crossed, gets funded and comes out. We'll start work on the next part of the book right away, and we'll go from there. And I've got a couple of other smaller projects on the go as well, working with some of the local artists. I can't say, specifically right now. We're sort of in the planning stages, but once that gets off the ground, I'll be excited to bring that one to Kickstarter as well.
Sounds good. Now, because you have some experiences making comic books, someone were to ask you, they want to make their first comic book, right? What one piece of advice would you give to that person? Honestly,
don't get discouraged, because this industry and making comics, it's so hard. When I first started thinking about, a career or even just making comics, it was years ago. I took a class with a friend of mine, Ty Templeton, his comic writing class, and I was like, I think I can do this. I think this is something I want to do. But every step of the way, it felt like it was never going to happen. Whether learning how to draw, finding an artist, getting published, getting this made, having money, it all costs so much money, and it's so easy to get discouraged. But the reality is, like, if you just keep plugging away, keep doing it, and finding ways to get it done, because the community is so helpful, particularly here in Toronto. The comics community is incredible and helpful, and I think they'll all say the same thing. Just like, don't give up, don't get discouraged, because if you've got something to say, if you've got a story to tell, if you've got something that you really need to, you want to get out there, and you want folks to read, it is worth it. Just putting your head down and getting it out there. I think that's the best advice, that you can take.
Good. Very good advice. There you go. Well, with everything you've got on the go, I'm wondering where you recommend people go online to find out about your current and your future projects.
Yeah. So, we're up on Kickstarter right now, like you mentioned. If you look it up on Kickstarter, it's Balikbayan, so Balikbayan, and it is there on Kickstarter, and it is a Kickstarter project that we love. So you can find more information about the book there. And you can also find me on social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm on, Twitter. I'm on all those things as well. Probably Twitter is probably the fastest way, and you can find the rest of my socials through there. My Twitter handle is son of Estrella, that's my last name there. But yeah, honestly, the Kickstarter is the best place to go to find more information about me and my projects and what's going on.
Great. Well, Jeff, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
I think I mentioned it earlier, but I'm just so thankful to have such a supportive community here in Toronto. I've been in the comic space here in Toronto for, since the, late 2000s. I've made some great friends and I've met some great people and other great creators. And it's so gratifying to see how far a lot of the folks, I started taking classes and learning how to write and create with have come. A good friend of mine, Jason Lowe, he was just a guy writing a comic about that he made himself, and now he writes for Marvel. It's incredible how far he's come. And another friend of mine, Sean Daly, he was a music engineer and taught himself how to draw, and now he's got books coming out. Every time I blink, I feel like he's got a new book coming out. So it's just so incredible to have this community here, and I think if there's anything to spotlight, it's how great the comics community in Toronto is, and how great the people here and working here and having the support of this community is.
Thanks to Jeff for the chat. You can discover more about Jeff Estrella on Instagram at Jeff Strells. That's JEFFSTRELLS. And you can check out the Balikbayan The Return #1 on Kickstarter. Thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And remember to check out TrueNorthCountryComics.com website. True North Country Comics is on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel and hit the notification button. Remember, you can follow at True North Country Comics on most social media sites. And if you have any questions, feedback whatsoever, please send it to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2024.